on appointment to women. And following the rejection of the bills, women's groups barricaded the entrance of the National Assembly in protest at the time. The then leadership of the House had promised to revisit the bills, but failed to do so until the House adjourned. And since then, it's been crickets until now. And of course, as you said, the Deputy Speaker of the House, Benjamin Kalu, one of the 13 co-sponsors of the bill. But I set all of that to show there's an antecedent to how we treat bills and legislation that impact or affect Nigerian women. A Nigerian man can automatically transfer Nigerian citizenship to the woman he marries. A Nigerian woman cannot do the same.
Yeah.
And
well, we're equal, and the Constitution says that.
And it's based on merit, remember? It's also based on merit.
I like that phrase.
Yes, but I asked that to ask, let's say for all intents and purposes, second reading done, do you ever think this will make it to the table of the president? Or also won't get watered down? I mentioned, I think, was it Senator Biodun Olujimi? Is it Olujimi?
Yes.
That also was working on
the
a
gender and equal opportunities
bill. And how many attacks she got, and how eventually the bill was so watered down, she herself said she didn't feel like she could present it again. Could we see this bill, as it has been presented at second reading, actually make it to the table of the president of Nigeria?
So, you know, there comes a time where there is collective, what's the word now? Is it disenchantment? And I think we're there.
Oh, we're there.
As a country. And to be honest, if both chambers of the assembly are not embarrassed, I would be very surprised because it's embarrassing. Remember that we're an assembly, they have global parliaments, right? So people know. And the question is, how are we representing ourselves globally, right? Because you see, is that, what is it called? Local champion. If we if we are comparing ourselves with ourselves, that's fine. But you read the stats around Africa. We're not doing great.
No.
So, and then globally, 182. Is that what we want to be talking about? So for me, this is not even a conversation we should be having about the alternative, about it not being, getting to the president in terms of assent. To be honest, I'm not ready to conceptualize that as an option, to be honest, at this point, right? It is the only option is that this gets to committee level, then it goes to the Senate, and they also concur, and then it goes to the president, right? I would be optimistic to say that if there was a president that would assent to this, it would be this president. I would be optimistic to say that, right? So we better make sure that it gets to the president. That's what I would say. I don't think we have an option. The cost is too much. I'm sure you can tell my frustration. But because this is the work that we do day in, day out, it's just we're putting too much on the table. So, Tolu, I guess my point is I'm not willing to have an alternative conversation. I think what you just shared should be a reminder, okay, that those who are opposing the bill, it should be a reminder to them that there are so many other areas that Nigerian women are being discriminated against. So they can't take this one area and say this is a discriminatory law. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
The only option we have, and before we wrap up, let me say this. The political landscape of any nation changes everything about that nation. So that is why this is different. Because if we change our political landscape, we will change every area in terms of women's representation and leadership.
Wow. So we're just at the beginning of this conversation because the bill has passed second reading, but there is very, very strong opposition to it. Some saying merit, some saying about the spirit of the Constitution. As Abosede George Organ of Willen is following up, we're also following up very closely. And we also extend an invitation to those in favor, and particularly those opposed to this bill. Come and sit at the table. Let's talk about it and why you feel that Nigerian women are not deserving of these extra seats. That would be an interesting conversation. I would love to have it here.
Just keep me at the back.
Wow, what a very insightful conversation. And just as Tolu said, we are not at the end of it at all. This is just a beginning. And I actually think that when she talked about women, individual challenges, women need to start to work on our psyche. Because even if they're advocating, we need to start to educate ourselves so that when this time that we all hope will comes. We have women that are ready to just go.
Absolutely.
And that's the work that we
need
have
to
do.
see the possibility, not just dream it. Because it's one thing to say, oh, I wish one day women, but we're not empowering ourselves for that day.
So we need to start preparing. As far as I'm concerned, you know me, I've already considered this bill passed. So let's start preparing, and that's the work women are committed to as well.
We have to do.
Thank
you so much, Abosede again. Anyway, this is where we have to say goodbye on today's episode of Jasiri. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, because I did. Join us tomorrow, because it's our Friday edition, and because it's the last Friday that one of us will be here before she jets off to wherever she's going. Hot Topic special.
Why are you announcing for me, Village Town Crier?
I just said wherever. And I didn't even mention who. But LFO concept has worked. Anyway, thank you. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye.
It's not just news to us, it's our voice and our story. It's our report, how we tell African stories for Africans. With detailed, timely and authentic reports, News Central is your home for true news and African stories. I am Omolola Ololade. This is News Central. Direct response to live happenings. Factual content as truthful reporting is at the heart of our responsibility. This is the site of where the building collapse happened at about 4-5 yesterday evening. I am Bettina Onwili. This is News Central.
Fidelity Bank is pleased to introduce its public offer and rights issue. For just 9 naira 75 kobo, you can subscribe for a share in Fidelity Bank, and shareholders can exercise their rights with just 9 naira 25 kobo per share in the rights issue. Time is ticking, so join us at Fidelity Bank. To subscribe, visit any registered stockbroker or any of the issuing houses to the offer, or any Fidelity Bank branch. Offer lasts till July 29th, 2024. For guidance, please read the prospectus or rights circular, or consult your stockbroker, fund or portfolio manager, banker, solicitor, or other professional advisors.
We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
I love to make a difference as a journalist, because when you speak to the situation or the people affected, that's when you get the full story.
And so we go all out. The protest was ongoing and it was peaceful across the plains for real-time stories. And it was the longest bridge until the 6th of October bridge was completed in Cairo, Egypt. Knee on knee. This is News Central.
Nakubolo, Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
On Digi 360, we give you a complete dose of everything.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it. Use it to take action. Digi 360, dissecting the issues.
Good morning. South Africa pushes for more renewable energy uptake with inward buying and investment mission. And in Nigeria, President Tinubu proposes one-time tax on banks' forex gains. What are industry players saying about this? And also, Ghana's debt restructuring aids cocoa regulators' earnings. But the question is this sustainable? These are the burning questions we will be examining on Business Edge today. Many thanks for joining me today. I am Perpetua Fasami Peter. We begin with top business headlines. Cost of petrol was 1,117 naira per litre as of Tuesday, July 16, 2024, according to the Major Energies Marketers Association of Nigeria, MEMAN. MEMAN disclosed this during a webinar with journalists on Wednesday. The association revealed that the landing cost of diesel was 1,157 naira per litre, while that of aviation fuel was 1,127 naira per litre. The 1,117 naira landing cost of petrol is far above the pump price of the product in Nigeria. At the moment, 5 filling stations separated by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited and those of the major marketers sell PMS at between 617 naira per litre and 660 naira per litre, while independent marketers sell for 700 naira per litre or more. Total Energies has sold its minority share in a major Nigerian onshore oil joint venture to Mauritius-based Chapel Energies for $860 million, the French energy group said on Wednesday. CEO Patrick Pouyanné had said in February that Total Energies was looking to exit its 10% stake in the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, which has struggled with hundreds of oil spills as a result of theft, sabotage and operational issues that led to costly repairs and high-profile lawsuits. Total Energies has sold its minority share in a major Nigerian onshore oil joint venture to Mauritius-based Chapel Energies for $860 million. Egypt's total budget deficit fell to 505 billion Egyptian pounds in fiscal year 2023-2024 that ended on June 30, compared with 610 billion Egyptian pounds a year earlier, Finance Minister Ahmed Kochik said in a statement. The minister added that the country recorded a preliminary surplus of 857 billion Egyptian pounds in the 2023-2024 budget, compared with 164 billion Egyptian pounds in the previous year. Egypt devalued its currency in March to curb rising inflation. The pound was fixed at 30.85 per dollar for a year before plunging towards 50, and it is now trading at around 47 to the dollar. The minister added that revenues went up by around 59.3% in 2023-2024. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we have more for you this morning on Business Edge. Stay with us. Across the continent, the need for a robust and reliable energy sector is undeniable. Despite numerous domestic efforts, Africa continues to grapple with energy access and security issues. This week, we see South Africa hosting an energy sector inward buying and investment mission, highlighting the urgent need for investment. But how far-reaching can such initiatives be? Furthermore, with the African Development Bank estimating a massive annual investment needed to achieve universal access and industrialization, the question remains, what are the roadblocks? And can Africa bridge this energy gap in the foreseeable future? Well, I am now joined by Mohan Vivekanandan, Group Executive, Client Coverage, Development Bank of South Africa. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me today.
All right, well, we see an energy sector inward buying and investment missions ongoing right now in South Africa. Talk to me, how far-reaching do you think this can be, given the focus on increased intra-African trade through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, that's AfTA, as well as the desire of South African exporters to grow their export revenues? Talk to us about this.
Sure. We are hosting 10 different countries coming through to South Africa and, engage with various companies in our country who participate in the energy sector. What we've seen in South Africa is that, for the last many years, we've had significant challenges with the lack of power, and that's impacted economic growth, had significant impact on job losses as well. But what we've also seen is that the government in South Africa have made some very far-reaching changes to the energy sector laws, and that has allowed a lot of new projects to come through, especially in renewable energy, wind, solar, and some storage as well. And that's now, along with improvements in the baseload power plants in the country, has led to a situation where we now have more than 100 days without electricity load shedding in the country. So, we believe that this significant investment that's come through into the energy sector in South Africa also can be lessons that other countries on the continent can learn from as well. And so we look forward to, working with all of the countries that we operate in. We, as the Development Bank of Southern Africa, currently finance projects in infrastructure across at least 20 different countries on the continent, including in Nigeria, as an example. And so, we're looking forward to much more of these kinds of investments. We also announced, as an example, a geothermal investment in Kenya with a local Kenyan entity, Socian Energy. So, that's something else that we were able to showcase.
All right, now let's talk about this. Now, Africa must definitely address its energy issues, and I reckon that there have been several efforts to address this domestically. Why does it sort of seem like these efforts are not yielding the desired results?
Look, it's true. With the rates of population growth and the economic growth that we'd like to see, we need a lot more investment in energy, in the energy sector, than what we're having right now. As I said, in the South African scenario, there has been quite a bit of new power projects coming on board to the extent that we have been able to alleviate some of the challenges here. But if you look at the continent as a whole, the level of energy usage per capita is, even compared to India, is only 1/6 of that of India within sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa. So there's a lot more investments that are needed. And part of it is that we're not creating enough opportunities for private sector to be able to invest in the energy sector. There's a number of reasons, including the legislation, but also the state of utilities. So we need to, what we believe needs to happen is governments need to allow private-to-private transactions to take place in the energy sector. And by doing that, you'll allow businesses to purchase their own power, which will allow them to grow, create jobs, and industrialize.
Well, specifically, I'd like you to paint a picture of, the South African story and what is being done, to sort of fix that particular sector.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the major ones is our electric utility, Eskom, has improved its own performance. At some point last year, we were seeing that what they call their availability factor was in the mid-50s. It's not percentile. It's now in the mid-60s. So that extra 10% alone, is in the range of another 4.5 gigawatts of baseload power that's now coming through. But in addition to that, there's been very significant investments in renewable energy through the government procurement program, what we call the Renewable Energy IPP program. That's secured up to 11 megawatts of renewable energy, of which 6 to 7 is already feeding into the grid. But separate from that, since private to private transactions have been allowed over the last 2 years, we, the DBSA alone, have funded over 1 gigawatt of renewable energy projects where the offtake is from the private sector. The first of which, a large solar project, is now feeding over 200 megawatts into the grid already. And with the rest of those projects that will be coming through. So, the combination of those has led to significant new power. And then finally, households, small businesses have also procured their own solar, in some cases with battery storage. And the estimate is that's an additional 5.5 gigawatts of renewables only for small embedded generation by households and small businesses. So when you sum all of that together, you're looking at significant amounts of new renewables, over 10 gigawatts that's coming through into the grid.
Well, while we have all that going on and coming through into the grid, South Africa has sort of shifted the goalpost again on its emissions reduction target, moving from 2030 to 2050. Are you even convinced that it will be able to meet this particular target?
Well, actually, the South African target, through our nationally determined contributions, have been in place and they have always been around 2050. So, I don't think it's a shifting in the goalpost by the South African government. What we've had to do is look at our existing coal-fired power plants and see what is the right timing for closing those. That's been driven by the need for energy security in South Africa. Any country has to ensure that we have enough energy for industry and for households. That comes first. But certainly, as I've said, there's been significant investments in renewables, and we continue to see a lot more of that happening. There's another procurement round for 5,000 megawatts of renewables that the government is hoping to close in the next month. And the DBSA is involved in that. And there'll be more of the same. So we think South Africa is well placed to deliver on our commitments by 2050.
Well, how do you balance that particular commitment with the fact that electricity isn't really where it should be in South Africa? I mean, that was what brought us to this point in the first place, where we have to then start extending.
Look, absolutely. I think, there were issues where we hadn't been building our power and we hadn't been maintaining the plants as well. And so that's a lesson for South Africa, and it's a lesson for the continent as a whole, which is we need to take the right legislative decisions to free up the energy sector so that, we can get power coming through. Private producers and funders like ourselves can support that, which will then allow our economies to grow and create the jobs that, the growing population of Africa need.
Right. The African Development Bank estimates that an approximate 30 to 40 billion US dollars per annum is required over the next 6 years for Africa's energy infrastructure build to ensure universal access to electricity, and not only that, but also to industrialize the continent. What are the issues here for you, and how is Africa coming on that?
Yeah, in fact, that figure is probably per annum, actually. So every year we need to be investing in 30, 40 odd billion dollars just in the energy sectors. One of the lessons for us is, we do about $1 billion worth of financing a year, and only about a third of that is in the energy sector. So, clearly we ourselves and even other bigger development banks like the African Development Bank don't have the capital needed to fund that 30 to 40 billion. But the good news is, our capital markets in South Africa and in other African countries have significantly more access to funding, and they're very keen to invest in the energy sector, as are global investors as well. But what needs to happen is you need to create the environment that allows that capital to flow through bankable projects. And having the right legislative framework is a critical element of it. But as we've seen in South Africa, when those changes are made, the projects do happen, and it does allow this capital to flow through to meet the requirements in the energy sector. So it can very easily happen in other countries as well.
Right, thank you so much for joining me today. Mohan Vivekanandan, Group Executive, Client Coverage, DBSA. Thank you for your time and thoughts on the show today.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
But when we come back, we'll turn our attention to burning issues. Nigeria proposes new one-time tax for banks. When we come back, we'll turn to that. Stay with me.
Has 60% of its entire population, and it's time for their voices to be heard loud and clear. Involving the young people in nation building is not merely a question of inclusion, but one that is vital for economic growth, innovation, peace, and security. Fafanua Africa provides the platform for the teeming young and vibrant population of our dear continent to voice their concerns with one goal in mind: provide profound and tangible solutions that will help redefine and reposition the future of Africa. Join us every Friday at 2 p.m. West African Time, 4 p.m. East African Time, and 3 p.m. Central African Time on News Central TV. Fafanua Africa, redefining Africa.
From the hills of the Southeast Africa, reporting coverage on the ground, exclusive reports, and the latest news, all right here. We speak to the people live, get their perspectives on the latest news, the happenings, and the trends. I am Bongani Siziba, live from Johannesburg, South Africa. This is News Central. It's not just news to us, it's our voice and our story. It's our report, how we tell African stories for Africans. With detailed, timely and authentic reports, News Central is your home for true news and African stories. I am Omolola Ololade. This is News Central.
To Market Watch now, Nigerian stocks fell on Wednesday, ending their three-day winning streak. Major sell-offs in MTN, Nascon, Dangote Sugar, and GT Bank dragged the market down, despite gains in companies like Julius Berger, Oando UCAP, and even some banking tickers like UBA, which inched up 3.70%, FBN Holdings 3.94%, Fidelity 2.4%, and even Access Corporation's 0.5% price gain. Consequently, the all-share index dipped by 43.27 points as investors lost 24.51 billion naira, while the year-to-date return stood at 33.78%. Now, let's take a look at the numbers. Beginning with the all-share index, we see that dip there, 0.04%, and the all-share index still maintained the 100,000 psychological mark. So we have 100,032.32. Now, let's take a look at the capitalization. For capitalization, 56.64 trillion. Now, that's what we have right there. And now to the top movers from yesterday's market activities. For top movers, we have the top traded stocks. Jay's Bank, 528.5 million shares were traded, and that, of course, gave us the 1.1 billion naira value. QTix, 194.6 million shares. That is right there. Zenith Bank, 77.8 million shares. Universal Insurance, 36.3 million shares traded. FCMB, 33.9 million shares were also traded. And when you look at this, to a very large extent, you also have the financial services sector, especially the banking sector right here for the top movers. Now to the top gainers, that's the top price gainers from yesterday's market activities. We have UCAP making another appearance today, and today it's also a 10% increase. Same with, well, when I say today, I actually meant yesterday, based on yesterday's market activity. So what we have is on Tuesday and on Wednesday, UCAP gained 10% in its share price. Now to QTix, 9.88%, Sunu Assurances 9.86%, Cornerstone 5.63%, and we have UACN right here with 4.79% gain in its share price. Now to the top losers. For top losers, we begin with R2 Briscoe losing 5.71%, FGN Cocoa 4.44%, Tantalizers 4.26%, Nimeth 3.53%, and we have Consolidated Hallmark Insurance PLC losing 3.45% of its share price. Now take a look at the sectoral performance. We have the banking services, banking sector going up 1.09%, insurance down this particular time 0.36%, oil and gas up 0.05%, we have consumer goods down 0.01%, and industrial goods up 0.01%. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we turn our attention to the top business headlines. And today we're looking at about 3 of them. The first one is about President Tinubu asking that there should be a one-time tax on, forex gains of banks. I mean, that's quite interesting. Something you and I definitely will look forward to. We'll get to that when we come back from this break.
Every day, maritime operations connect the world, transporting goods and fueling economies. Currently valued at about $25 billion, Africa's maritime industry and its connected sectors could be worth $50 to $80 billion in just a few years. But the industry must face its challenges, and that is where Maritime Radar comes in. At the heart of Maritime Radar is the focus on preserving Africa's waterways and marine economy for generations to come, while also building the continent's prosperity. Industry news, exclusive interviews, and News Central's unique storytelling sets the pace to bring to the fore investment opportunities in marine tourism and the blue economy, aquaculture, marine transportation, security, and much more. Navigate Africa's waterways and ride the waves with us.
Thank you for staying with us. We have 3 conversations we'll be looking at today. The first one, Nigeria proposes new one-time bank tax. And the second being IMF downgrades Nigeria's growth forecast. And the last one is about UAE denying that particular website where Nigerians were told to go make some payments and all of those things. These are the conversations for today. And joining me, I have Collins Okeke, financial analyst. Thank you, Collins Okeke, for joining me today.
Good morning, everyone watching.
Right. I also have with me Oladipo Ajayi, Head Fixed Income and Forex, Chapel Hill, Denham. Thank you, Oladipo Ajayi, for joining me today.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for having me on.
Okay, so let's start with you, Collins. What was your initial reaction when you saw that the president had proposed an additional 6.2 trillion naira increase in the 2024 budget?
I wasn't surprised. If you are a Nigerian today, you will know that the country has become a free-for-all, really. When I saw that particular budget, this would be like the 4th or the 5th one, where there have been, different challenge, budgets coming out. But it's cemented 2 suspicions that I have. The first one being that it is very, very possible, we all understand, we all know, even if it is not said, that the president has health challenges and may not really scrutinize documents that are presented to him. So I fear, personally, that perhaps a cabal has taken over and give the president things to sign that is then sent to a
But I
legislature.
believe that's something too witty to say, especially when you do not have proof in anywhere. I mean, I want us to just stay on dissecting this, what we can see.
Like I said, it's personal, like, because if you are passing a budget when you have passed a previous budget and the amount you are passing, it raises the question that if you have a recurrent expenditure of 3 trillion that you are putting in a new budget to be passed, how was it missed? That is the question. So I am just saying, like I said, I am not saying that is the truth. I said it is a personal thought. When I saw those things, I am not, against anybody. Anybody can come and,
All right, so based on the other thing you said, what's more concerning to you, the breakdown or the use to which this money will be put? An additional 3 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure or the request for a one-time tax on banks' forex windfall? Which of them, is more concerning to you?
Really, both of them. We know that Nigerian banks are not keen on absorbing cost. And we know that if you tax them, obviously they are going to try and find ways to pass that, to their clients, which is the lesser man. So what we would see if such a thing happens is that there will possibly be, increased interest rates on loans and charges. And obviously they would, come up with fantastic ways to ensure that whatever is taxed from them, is, taxed up to the next person, which is the common man. Additionally, it is interesting because if you look at the breakdown of previous budgets, when 1.7 for statutory transfer, the other 8 trillion for a recurrent expenditure, basically adding another 3 trillion. If you add all the expenditure, it gets about 20 trillion, and capital expenditure is about 11 to 2. We have a 2:1 of spending versus recurrent expenditure versus capital expenditure. This is a problem because what it shows is that we have a spending problem, and we need to, look at this, critically well before we find ourselves, if we're not already there, in dire straits where future generations will be unable to pay back some of this expenditure that we are spending today. So what this means is that going forward in an already harsh economic situation and condition, tasking banks, is the banks. Moreover, if we look at it, critically, this particular fund is not, give or take. It's not really actual money with the banks. What has been done by the banks is what is called asset reevaluation. So if, let's say, you buy an asset in the UK, maybe FX, at when, Naira was 1.5, and today it's at, say, 2,000, obviously in your books, you are going to say that you have a gain of 500 based on what you spent. So it's not that is actual cash. You are just, reevaluating based on accounting procedures that you have.
Okay, I'd like Oladipo to come in here. Thank you so much. For the thoughts you've sort of made so far. Oladipo, I'd like us to take a look at the technicality here. How realistic is the president's request to raise 6 trillion naira from banks' forex gain? Is the 6 trillion naira going to be raised from banks' forex gain, which I do not think is even up to 6 trillion naira when you add up everything from 2023 financial results? And then hasn't it been already taxed one way or the other?
Okay, let me start firstly from the budget itself. And, for me, I'm actually not surprised. And one of the reasons why I was not surprised is that I was expecting a supplementary budget. And my view is premised on the fact that currently the president has no choice as to speak. He has to increase minimum wage. And at the beginning of the year, when they were drawing up the budget, don't forget that the budget has been approved since the year 2023. And as at that time, that was not fully factored into. And even if it was factored into, you can see that the government is trying to go back and forth with the labor union around the level of increase. Even with 100% increase, laborers are still saying, no, that is not enough increase for them. So it tells you that whatever they budgeted on recurrent expenditure will not be enough to actually meet the obligation. And don't also forget that you cannot spend what has not been appropriated for. So I was already waiting for the president to actually go back to the house around increasing recurrent expenditure. So when they actually saw that, I was not actually surprised. And
Oladipo, let me ask you. I'm just curious here. Don't you think we should have, probably cemented the whole conversation around the new minimum wage before going back? What if there is a need to probably further raise more funds? Was to go back again?
So the issue currently on the table is that I don't know whether you saw last week where the labor union president mentioned that there was a plan to actually remove minimum wage from the exclusive list. So what that simply means is that so if they remove it from exclusive, they will move it to more like a concurrent list. So it means that it cannot be it cannot be a single decision of the federal government to determine what the minimum wage will be. So it simply means that the federal government can pay its minimum wage, and the state can actually go around and pay whatever rate that's actually is okay for them. And so the federal government, you will notice that the federal government on their part, they are ready to pay as much as a level. But it's the state government that is coming around to say, no, we can't pay as much as that. This is our level of revenue generating capacity. So we will not be able to do that. And what the federal government is doing is the aspect of the federal government and not the state government. Don't forget the federal government runs its budget, the state government runs its budget. And going back to the House is to actually go back and say, oh, we need additional amounts to actually cushion the effect of the current expenditure. So I'm actually not surprised I'm afraid with the recording expenditure.
Right. I'm afraid we have to take a break now. So when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Of course, we'll pay more attention to the issue at hand. Stay with us.
Fidelity Bank is pleased to introduce its public offer and rights issue. For just 9 naira 75 kobo, you can subscribe for a share in Fidelity Bank, and shareholders can exercise their rights with just 9 naira 25 kobo per share in the rights issue. Time is ticking, so join us at Fidelity Bank. To subscribe, visit any registered stockbroker or any of the issuing houses to the offer or any Fidelity Bank branch. Offer lasts till July 29th, 2024. For guidance, please read the prospectus or rights circular or consult your stockbroker, fund or portfolio manager, banker, solicitor, or other professional advisors.
We are Fidelity. We keep our word.
Glad to know you stay with us. And of course, we're talking about the one-time tax on banks' forex gain. Well, I have Oladipo Ajayi with me and Collins Okeke. Oladipo, before we went on that time out, you were talking about the minimum wage, and I'm sort of drawn to want to continue that conversation because many people, or a lot of persons, or some analysts have said that they do not want it to be moved to the concurrent list because that would mean that you would have some states where they would pay a certain amount, and maybe at the end of the day, you have people wanting to move to other states and all of those things. I mean, the conversation can go on and on. There is a whole lot to that conversation. So let's leave it there. Now, let's focus on this one-time tax. I'm asking, is this double taxation? Because if you talk about this particular forex gain, I believe that it was mentioned or it's been captured in the company's full-year financials. And, of course, it has gone through the FIRS. I'd like to get your thoughts on this.
So if you check the finance bill, so the way it will be treated is this, and what they're saying, normally, when you prepare your financial, it's sent to the tax authority who will prepare your financial. And by so doing, they will consider the allowable expenses, non-allowable expenses before you arrive at your taxable income. So basically what it means is that, normally the exchange gain would have formed part of the taxable income. So it simply means that normally it would have been taxed at a 30% CIT tax. But what the government is now saying is that they are going to strike that out. So it means that when you're computing your taxable income, you will strike the exchange gain out separately. so that you will tax that at 50%, while you would tax the remaining part of your taxable income at 30%, which is the normal CIT tax. So the end goal is that they are trying to, like just what you said, it's more like a windfall tax, is one-off. And to also corroborate what Colin says, it is a revaluation gain. Of course, what they say that is that it's going to be realized. So it means that the unrealized part of it will not be taxed. So because you can have realized gain, you can have unrealized gain. The aspect that falls within this tax bracket is the one that's been realized. So it simply means that instead of paying a 30% CIT tax on it, you are now paying a 50% tax on it. So there will be a situation whereby there's double tax incident.
All right, let me come in here. When you say there won't be a situation where there will be double tax, does that mean that the one that had already been taxed is excluded? We're starting all over again? Or are we going back to say, okay, this has gone through the 30% CIT, maybe now we need to impute the remaining 20%? We need to understand that. Is this something that's going to happen in the future? Or is it about what, the 2023 financial year results?
You see, the way financial is prepared is that when you prepare your financials, and based on your own auditor, you would have done your estimated, and you would have sent that to maybe a central bank for approval. After it has been approved, that will be submitted to the tax authority. And it is after that, the tax authority will compute their tax. After computation of tax, it can be over, you can either pay more tax or pay lower than what you have estimated in your financial. What we have seen in the audited financial is more like an estimated tax. That is not the actual tax that is levied. Exactly. It's based on your own preparation of your financial statement. So there won't be a situation of double tax incident based on what the government has said. What government is saying is that that line item will be taxed separately from the other item on the financial. So it may be what it will mean that even if you are accurate in what you have computed before, what you just do, what the government is just going to slam on banks will now be the incremental aspect of it, which is going to be like additional 20% on what you have actually provided for initially. So basically, it is more like a separate tax lines from the way the previous tax has been actually conducted. For me, I don't think it's actually a good one. Because when you look at what it will mean to foreign investors that are actually looking at our market, what it will mean in terms of inconsistency, in terms of, and also what it will mean in terms of desperation, in terms of generating revenue, I don't think he actually set a good signal to the market.
All right, Oladipo, I'd like you to just answer this particular one now before we move to IMF, and of course I will be back to Collins for that. Does this in any way affect banks' recapitalization efforts? I mean, I recall that the CBN had asked them not to spend their forex gains or share as dividend, and some would also like to know if the forex gains are part of the bank's retained earnings, which they were not meant to calculate as part of their capital.
Yes, exactly. It's part of the retained earning. It goes through, sometimes you pass it through your OCI, other comprehensive income, or you go through your P&L directly and you eat your retained earning directly. One way or the other, it will be part of your retained earning or it comes under your reserve. And don't forget that these elements are not allowed by the central bank for you to add it as part of your capital. And that's one of the reasons why the central bank said that what forms your capital for this recapitalization exercise is just your own share capital and your share premium. So, and that's exactly, so it means there will not be any impact on the current recapitalization exercise.
Right, thank you so much. Collins, now let's move to our next story. The IMF report attributes the downgrade to sub-Saharan Africa's growth rate. It has a downgraded SSA growth rate as a result of Nigeria's sluggish performance, especially in Q1 2024. Now, I'd like you to talk to us about this. How significant are the economic conditions in other countries within the region? And are there specific factors besides Nigeria that could further dampen or improve the overall growth forecast? That looks like some 3-in-1 question or something like that, but I trust you.
First off, it's good and it's bad. What it tells us is Nigeria is to West Africa what the United States is to North America or what Germany is to Europe. We do know that our capital flows to the region, helps the economy of the other countries in the region. And of course, we do normally laugh about it, but we say, oh, Benin Republic is like the 37th state of Nigeria because, it is firmly tethered to the country. In terms of what can be done in terms of outlook to do this, it is continuous what Europe has done really, but to change it to our own specific factors. What we see in West Africa is, despite the fact that yes, Nigerian capital flows into other countries, we are still not. There has still been not the political will, I will use that word, to have a fully formed economic union that makes it a united market, a larger market, such that, there is ease of access to free trade, across not just Nigeria, but, across the border without all the issues of, bureaucratic visas issues. So what can be done is that West African leaders need to have a sit down and determine for themselves the pictorial rhetoric of saying we want to form an AFROS or an ECOS, but to start looking deeply into how we can be a united single market that can allow the free ease of access of capital and trade itself. Capital flows it's good at the moment, it flows, but trade is still a very, very challenging thing across border-wise. So what West Africa can do is to have a sit down, think about how to invest in infrastructural development. For the longest period, we have tried, building roads or pipelines across borders, but, capital has been challenging. And in the nearest future, I don't see how, this would work. But a sit down with a mapped out plan among West African leaders regarding a more united, single market framework and, enjoining policies that is not different, in individual countries. Because, like they say, united we stand, divided we fall. And this is exacerbated by, international politics between Anglophone and Francophone countries in the region, which continues to provide friction because the Francophones are afraid of domination by the Anglophones, and the Anglophones obviously do not want to come under the tutelage of France, based on what is being obtainable in the Francophone. So for West Africa to, really go forward, a sit down happens first and a framework mapped out that, helps the region.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Oladipo Ajayi, let's close on this. Let me get your thoughts on this and then we'll just wrap it all up.
Well, I think Colin has said a great one around that, and I also think that implementation of many things that ECOWAS has been working on. I think you don't talk too much. It's better for you to act more than talk too much. And we've had the African Trade Agreement on the table for a long time, where we need to expand the level of trade among African countries. And also, when you now narrow down to ECOWAS, countries within the West African climb also need to actually now copy this and now bring it to a small sub-unit of Africa, where you ensure that trades are actually consummated within the West African countries, and ensure that, just like what Colin said, that the policy directions, where you have more like a uniform policy directions that will actually grow the economy of West African countries' economy. So I think if we can actually tow this route, and what IMF just said was that it was as a result of the level of activity that happened in Q1. So we have Q2, we have Q3 that we are just starting currently, and we also have the final quarter for the year to actually make that turnaround. So if we can actually improve the level of activity among member countries, I think the level of growth will actually be better. And also, like Colin that actually alluded to, when Nigeria actually claims the whole West African nations will actually catch cold. What's currently happening in our own climate is also a factor that we are actually seeing in West African countries. Currently, we are actually about a more like an aggressive monetary policy, which is one way or the other dampening growth. And I think by the time we get more like towards the end of Q3, where we expect the monetary policy guy to actually reduce the level of aggression, I think that will also help in the level of growth that we may likely see in Q4, which will also impact West African countries as well.
Right, Oladipo Ajayi, thank you so much for your thoughts. I'd like to hear it from you when you talk about the MPC, loosening up a bit. I'd like to hear that from you. Thank you so much. Head of Fixed Income and Forex, Chapel Hill Denham. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, Collins Okeke, financial analyst, thank you too for your time and your thoughts on the show today.
Thank you to the panelists.
Great. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll bring you international business headlines. Stay with me. International business headlines now. London stocks rose on Thursday amid a raft of mixed corporate earnings, while investors parsed data that showed growth in British wages slowed, but remained at levels that would be too high for the Bank of England to keep inflation at its 2% target. The blue chip FTSE 100 index was up 0.8%, set for its best day in 2 months if gains hold. The mid-cap FTSE 250 index gained 0.2% as of 7/9 GMT. Data show that average weekly earnings, excluding bonuses, a key gauge of inflation pressure for the BOE as it considers whether to cut interest rates next month, grew by 5.7% in a 3-month period ended May, compared with a year earlier. Japan's yen scaled a 6-week high on Thursday, spurring speculation of an official push, while traders waited on a European Central Bank meeting to direct the euro's next move. At $1.0929, the common currency was pinned near Wednesday's 4-month peak ahead of a meeting where rates are all but certain to be left steady and focuses on whether policymakers support market bets of a rate cut in September. Bank of Japan money market data suggested authorities may have bought nearly 6 trillion yen last week, and traders said this week's moves bore the hallmarks of further intervention, or at least of markets easily spooked by that prospect. And finally, crude oil prices extended gains from the previous session on Thursday, buoyed by a bigger than expected decline last week in crude stocks in the United States, the world's largest oil consumer. Brent futures rose 58 cents or 0.7% to $85.66 a barrel by 6:30 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude gained 75 cents or 0.9% to $83.60. Both contracts settled higher on Wednesday. U.S. crude inventories fell by 4.9 million barrels last week, the latest data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration showed. That exceeds a decline of 30,000 barrels forecast by analysts in a Reuters poll and a drop of 4.4 million barrels in a report from the American Petroleum Institute Trade Group. Up next, Ghana's debt restructuring aids cocoa regulators' earnings. Don't go away.
I am Sunny Irabo, and I have something special for you. Join me every week for thought-provoking conversations with Africa's most influential leaders and change makers from diverse sectors.
The solution to this is not about begging for food or giving food away. The solution is for Africa to have a bowl in hand, not to beg, but to put seed in those bowls and grow its own food.
Together, we'll explore innovative solutions to the continent's most pressing challenges, from social commentary to politics, the economy, health, family, and lifestyle. We will connect the dots with exclusive interviews with those who are at the forefront of realizing the continent's potential. Expect fresh, interesting, and engaging interviews on the issues that not only matter to us, but that affect Africa and Africans. Sunny Irabo live on News Central.
As reporters, we don't just gather news stories, we experience them daily. So join us on Report Desk Africa as we share these experiences and review the top African stories. Only on News Central.
It's not just news to us, it's our voice and our story. It's our report. How we tell African stories for Africans. With detailed, timely and authentic reports, News Central is your home for true news and African stories. I am Omolola Ololade. This is News Central.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, the stories that put Africa first.
Well, sadly, we are unable to bring you that conversation. That's it on this edition of Business Edge. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also head on to our website, www.newscentral.africa. You can download our mobile app on Play Store and App Store. Thank you for joining me today. Till next time, I am Perpetua Fasomipita. Do enjoy the rest of the day. Bye for now.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, the stories that put Africa first.
I am Sunny Irabo, and I have something special for you. Join me every week for thought-provoking conversations with Africa's most influential leaders and change makers from diverse sectors.
The solution to this is not about begging for food or giving food away. The solution is for Africa to have a ball in hand, not to beg, or to put seed in those bowls and grow its own food.
Together, we'll explore innovative solutions to the continent's most pressing challenges, from social commentary to politics, the economy, health, family, and lifestyle. We will connect the dots with exclusive interviews with those who are at the forefront of realizing the continent's potential. Expect fresh, interesting, and engaging interviews on the issues that not only matter to us, but that affect Africa and Africans. Sunny Irabo live on News Central.
Every day, maritime operations connect the world, transporting goods and fueling economies. Currently valued at about $25 billion, Africa's maritime industry and its connected sectors could be worth $50 to $80 billion in just a few years. But the industry must face its challenges, and that is where Maritime Radar comes in. At the heart of Maritime Radar is the focus on preserving Africa's waterways and marine economy for generations to come, while also building the continent's prosperity. Industry news, exclusive interviews, and News Central's unique storytelling sets the pace to bring to the fore investment opportunities in marine tourism and the blue economy, aquaculture, marine transportation, security, and much more. Navigate Africa's waterways and ride the waves with us.
Hello and welcome. You're watching News Now on News Central TV. I am Judith TV. The top stories at this hour. President Tinubu labour to resume new minimum wage talks today. Sanu Nasu embark on nationwide protest. Kenyan police ban demonstrations in Nairobi after deadly rallies. Details shortly. And we begin